Te ao mai, ra roto I te pō, he kona au, titiro atu ai, ora mate, he au koe no ai. Whakaria mai tori peka ki au, te ao mai, ra roto I te pō, he kona au titiro atu ai. Ora mate, hei au koe no Whakaria mai, tori peka ki au, te ao mai, ra roto I te pō, he kona au, titiro atu ai, ora mate, hei au koe no ai. Whakaria mai tori peka ki au, te ao mai, ra roto I te pō, he kona au titiro atu ai, ora mate, hei au koe no ai. Ora mate, hei au koe no ai.
E te atua e tiore nei ngā manu, e whiti nei te rā, e ara nei te tāngata, e korikori nei te tinana, e hihiko nei te wairua. Paua ki roto ki a mātou te whakaro nui, o tō whakaro pai. Kia mura ai te ahi kā o tō wairua tapu. Kia rite ki te ihi o te rā. Mauri ora e te karaiti. Te kura hautu o tō mātou kura tiwaka. Āmene.
I te whānau, kua tai mai nei, haere mai, nau mai, whakatau mai rā. Te mea tuatahi ki te atua kaharawa. Te kai homai o ngā mea katoa. Te mea tuarua ki a tātou katoa. Ki tēnei hui hui nā te kaupapa Taha Māori. Nau reira, piki mai, kāki mai, tēnā tātou katoa.
E hara I te mea no nai ane Te aroha no ngā tupuna I tuku iho I tuku iho Te whenua, te oranga o te iwi no ngā tupuna I tuku iho, I tuku iho. Whakapono tūmanako te aroha no ngā tūpuna I tuku iho, I tuku iho, I tuku iho, I tuku iho.
Ngā mihi mahana, ngā mihi aroha kia koutou. Tēnei au e mihi atu kia koutou katoa. Kua tatu mai I raro tuanui o tō tātou sui, Taha Māori. Tēnā koutou. I acknowledge everyone who has gathered today. Kei te mihi kia koutou katoa, kua tatu mai I roto I te kaupapa nei. Nau mai, haere mai, hoki mai. Haria mai o koutou tini aitua. I welcome you all to this kaupapa and welcome back those who have joined us once more. I welcome all those you have loved and bring with you. Rātou kua wehi atu ki tua o te arai, haere koutou. Haere ki te pō nui, te pō roa, te pō pauri. He moi, haere. We bring together those that we mourn, those who have passed on, yours and mine. We farewell them, haere. Tātou ngā kano hi ora, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. And to all the living, those we can see, greetings once, greetings twice, greetings 3 times. Just a quick disclaimer. Some of you will already be familiar with this, that I'm not a reo teacher and a translator, but I bring my heart to this kaupapa, my passion to this kaupapa, to encourage you to engage. And thank you for joining us. Where there are back translations being used in these liturgies, which do happen, we did it in our last session with Bishop of Waiapu, they are not approved, and we ask that they be used purely for understanding the kupu using a Māori lens of the translators of the time, and they are not for public use. Just what we did, of course, just a reminder, We went through quite a lot in that last session. There were 7 sessions, of course. We went through the 476, some of the translations that are diglot in the prayer book, and we also unpacked some of those back translations because they aren't actually word for word in the book. We did some of the 499 and the back translations of that, and you will already know, most of you, that there is no diglot in the prayer book at all. So there's no translation for you in the prayer book at all. We did the Lord's Prayer, we did the affirmation of faith, he tikanga whakapono. We did the canticle by Tā Kingi Ihaka on page 154 of the prayer book in the midday canticle. We did the Kairanga Kaihapa, the invitation to the communion, yours truly, of course, being recorded having done that. We did the grace each day. We did the grace to conclude our zui. Opening and closing karakia. We stayed with the kaupapa of the kupu right throughout the series so that you can learn them and take them with you out into your ministry. No Mai Piki Mai was the welcoming song that was written by Tā Kingi Ihaka, and it's a welcome song used primarily when there is a speech of the people, the home people, and it's followed up by a welcome song. E toru ngā mea, based on scripture, there are 3 things in that the Bible tells us of the most importance, and that is faith, hope, and the most important of these is love. Hallelujah, we used, that's it, Alleluia, David's song, we did that. And of course, we did 7 short docu-series of Land of the Long White Cloud. If you're wanting to catch up on any of those, for anyone who's new to Taha Māori, the replays are available on the Auckland Diocese website. Just go to What We Do in the Auckland Diocese website, and it'll take you to you know, where you pick up the Taha Māori. We also did the vowel sounds, and I encourage you to keep going with your vowel sounds. And again, I reiterate that if you can get your sounds right, your vowel sounds right, you will have conquered 75% of your confidence to use Te Reo Māori and the liturgies from the New Zealand Prayer Book in public. Because that's always the biggest thing, is the pronunciation is always the big thing. And that brings about sort of discomfort, let's say, or it shakes the confidence in people because they feel they can't say it properly. But trust me, if you can get your tongue around the vowels and the sounds of those vowels, you will have conquered 75% of that fear. And so again, it's a in cup, e, short, egg, e. So the I is actually e, as in eat, it's short without the macron, or as in for, u, as in put. So it's not you. You know, when we say it in English, we say it with a Y almost, Y-O-O, or Y-U. It's not you, it's u, without the Y in the front of it, put. When it's got a macron, the little stroke above it, it's elongated. Same sound, but elongated, as in barn, there, be, torn, to. So you can hear the difference between for and torn. And what makes that difference is the macron above the letter. Then we went through all the combinations of those vowel sounds. I, ao, au, e, eo, eu. And those are some Māori words that use those combinations. Pae, pae, kai moana, ao te aroa. That's probably one of the best words, I think, given that it's our country. Ao te te roa. It's a really good one to tackle some of those combinations of vowels. Hauora, hauora. Pēhea. So the E has got a macron across it, so it's a longer word. Pēhea. Tēnei. Reo. Kūmeu. Kūmeu. Kia ora. Kie, kie. Mōhio. Piu, piu. Oneroa. Toi, toi. Ngoi kore. Koutou. Now, the koutou, you'll even hear me say, it doesn't sound like it's got a separate, you know, o, o. We kind of talk a bit quick, but actually the proper way to say it is koutou. Tēnā koutou katoa. But we say it quickly. So it's easy to miss that it's got those two vowels in it. Kōrua. Puehu. Hui. So I hope that's been helpful. Just a reminder about those vowel sounds. Go back to some of the series that we had in the past. We unpacked a few place names throughout the diocese that will help you with those combination vowels. But what I'd like to do now is, some of you may already be familiar with this. I want to give you a beautiful vision of how to get your tongue around the vowels, and it's a song. Haka mana para tawa ngawha. And if you keep practicing this, you won't regret doing so. So it's slowed down a little bit, but it goes through twice. So, whakarongo mai.
Toru wha. A haka mana para tawa ngawha. Heke mene pere te wenge whe. I hiki mini piri ti wingi whi. O hoko mono poro tō ngā whō. A e I o u. Uhuku munu puru tu ungufu. Mangere tapu wai. O ne hunga aorere. O tahu papa toi toi. Ihu matonga iwi tamaki makaurau. A haka mana para tawa ngawha. E heke mene pere te wenge whe. I hiki mini piri ti wingi whi. O hoko monu poro tō ongo whō. A e I o u. Uhuku munu puru tu ungufu. Mangere tapu wai o ne hunga aorere. O tahu papa toi toi. Ihu matonga iwi tamaki makaurau. Aka mana para tawa ngawha. E heke mene pere te wenge whe. I hiki mini piri ti wingi whi. O hoko mono poro tō ongo whō. A e I o u. Uhuku munu puru tu ungufu.
And it's okay to sway along, and it's okay to dance along, and it's okay to stand up and just wave your arms around while you're learning this. The whole idea of this waiata, which was created many, 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 many years ago, is so that you can get the sound, get the sound right. And it's all the vowels, as you can see, in some place names. So go back and play this again when you've got access to the resource shortly after today's session. A haka mana para tawa ngā whā. Then you can say it with macrons. Aha ka mana para tawa ngā whā. Then you can turn the music off, get your guitar out, get your piano out. We all know the tune. So enjoy. I'll keep playing that for this series. So what's next on Taha Māori? And thank you for all those who offered us some feedback in the survey that we sent out after the last session. So many wanted to, there were many things that wanted to be picked up, and we've captured some of that for you. Of course, one of them is the funeral and pastoral liturgies. And they're available in our prayer book on page 826 on Te Tikanga mō te takahi whare, and that's about blessing a house after a funeral on page 871. Te hura kōhatu is a memorial. We call it an unveiling. It's an unveiling, and it's usually done 1 year after the passing of the person. And it's for practical reasons, really. It's to let the soil settle down, because often it's got concrete over the top of the grave. And then there's the headstone is unveiled in a beautiful, beautiful memorial. So Te Hura Kōhatu on page 881. And today in this series particularly, we'll start exploring and discussing Te Tiriti and Te Pouhere insights. Te Tiriti being the Treaty of Waitangi, and Te Pouhere the province's constitution called Te Pouhere. So that's what's next, something we can perhaps look forward to. So tangi or tangihanga is not funeral. The word doesn't mean funeral, just so you know. It refers to funeral, but it doesn't mean funeral. Tangi means to cry, to mourn, or to weep. Yes, it's referred to as a funeral, but it doesn't actually mean funeral. So when I say e tangi ana ahau, I'm talking about I am crying. So I'm not actually referring to me, I am funeraling, if I could put it that way. And it's a lament. So if you've ever had to go onto a marae during a tangi at all, you would have heard it if you were at Sir Paul Reeves' tangi at Holy Sepulchre. He was there for 3 days and 3 nights. You would have heard the lament. It's a specialised skill that women do, and it's very, very moving. If you're not moved to tears, boy. Tūroro, this is in some of the pastoral liturgies. Tūroro is sick, to be sick, or very ill. There's another word, I haven't included it here, and that's māwiwi. Māwiwi, but for the sake of the prayer book, we don't use the word māwiwi. The word in the prayer book is tūroro. Tono is not actually in the prayer book, but it refers to prayers at the time of death, when you commend their spirit to God when they die in front of you, generally. But it's on the moment, it's right at the moment, at the time of death, not afterwards. Tūpāpaku is the deceased person's body. Nehu is to bury. And again, it's not tangi. Many people use tangi as a description of the burial, but actually it's nehu. And what happens with priests and kaumātua when we're talking about when is the nehu, we never say when is the tangi. We always say when is the nehu, the burial, the interment. A tanu or tanumia is also burial, interment, committal, and it's used in the prayer book, I tanumia, as part of the affirmation of faith. He was buried. Jesus was buried. and it's in the affirmation of faith. So that's some of the understandings around tangi and tangihanga. Ministry of Healing, of course, is available on those pages, 738 to 745. The only te reo Māori in that liturgy is the Lord's Prayer, Te Nui a Te Ariki, and the blessing of the sick. In the additional directions on page 746, there are no Māori karakia. Equally with the prayers for use in critical situations, there is no Māori karakia. Karakia tono, now you know what tono is. Reconciliation of a penitent, so you might be at the bedside, you're able to take their confession, but there is no Māori karakia in the prayer book. Prayer at the time of death, again, Lord's Prayer and the blessing of the sick. Prayers before the funeral, there's sentences, prayers, readings, and hymns. For the funeral liturgies, they're all available, but there are no Māori karakia that I can draw upon. So let's start with some of the liturgy. You've got the page numbers there at the top of the screen. If you've got your book handy, you don't have to have it, but the page numbers are at the top of the screen, which is where you'll find the liturgy in the prayer book. Kia noho a ihoa ki a koutou, ma ihoa koe e manaki. Ko ahau te aranga me te ora. Ko ia e whakapono ana ki ahau. Aha koa kua mate e ora anō. E kore anō hoki e mate. Ake, ngā tāngata katoa e ora ana. A e whakapono ana ki ahau. Haere mai ki ahau e koutou katoa e māwiwi ana. E taimaha ana a mā kū koutou e whakaoki-oki. Ko ia anō te aroha o te atua ki te ao. Ko mai ana e ia tāna tamakotahi. Kia kāhore ai e ngaro te tangata. E whakapono ana ki aia. Engari kia whiwhi ai ki te ora tonu. Aha koa nā te mate tātou I wehi I a whoever that might be. Kia mahara e kore tātou e motuhia I te aroha noa o te atua. E kore te mate te ora rānei. E kore ngā anahera, ngā rangatiratanga rānei. E kore ngā mea o naia nei. E kore ngā mea e puta mai a mua. E kore ngā mana. E kore te tike, e kore te hōhonu. E kore tētahi atu mea hanga. E kaha kia momotu I a tātou. I te aroha o te atua. I tērā I roto nei I a karaiti ihu. I tō tātou āriki. Kia whakapainga te atua, te matua o tō tātou āriki o ihu karaiti, nāna nei, nā tāna mahi tohu e nui nei. ki te tūmana ko ora, ia ihu karaiti, ka ara ake nei i te hunga mate. Ko ihoa ana ke e tapuana, e tikana, e maramana. I runga i tēnei whakapono, ka tuku atu koe e ki tāna whakawā me āna mahi tohu. Ki tāna murunga hara me tōna aroha. Kia whakapainga te atua, te matua. Nāna nei i mea kia te aho te māramatanga o te karaiti kia koe. Whakangaro i te ao, i runga i te aroha o te atua matua. Nāna nei koe i hanga, i runga i ngā mahi tohu a ihu karaiti. Nāna nei koe i hoko, i runga i te mana o te wairua tapu. E whakakaha nei i a koe. Whakauru atu ki te kāhui o te hunga pono. Noho mai i runga i te rangi Māori. Wai hoki. Ka tukua tō tinana ki te one one. Kia tahuna rānei. He one one ki te one one. He pungarehu ki te pungarehu. He puehu ki te puehu. Me te tino tūmanako atu ki te aranga ake ki te ora tonu. Ko ihu karaiti hoki tō mātou āriki. Āmeni. And that's your tangi liturgy. And I know it sounds all like a bit much, page after page after page. But once you play it back and choose, you know, you can just keep playing it back until you choose which part of the liturgy you'd like to use and how it's pronounced. I've chanted some of it, I've said some of it. The liturgies for many of you won't be foreign. You'll be familiar with the liturgies, and I encourage you to choose one or two next time you do a funeral. It doesn't have to be a funeral for Māori. You don't know who in the family or who in their friends are in your midst who might be Māori, and they might appreciate it. But I encourage you to use it, just one part of the tangi liturgy next time you do a funeral or a cremation. Kia tahuna is cremation. And I wish you well on that. Anything you want to ask in terms of the liturgies, just send us an email to Taha Māori at Auckland Anglican. The email address is at the end of our presentation today. I'd like to move us on now to Te Tiriti to Te Pouhere. The journey from 1840 to 1992. 1840 being the year that the Treaty of Waitangi was signed, to 1992, the adoption of Te Pouhere, or our province's constitution, which is still in place today. But I want to give you just a quick glimpse of the Book of Common Prayer, Te Rawiri. Now, many of the liturgies that aren't available in the current prayer book were actually made available in Te Rawiri through the Book of Common Prayer. So as Taha Māori, we offer an appropriate moment to reflect briefly on the place of Te Rawiri as we prepare for Te Pouhere Sunday. That's this coming Sunday. So a brief glimpse of Māori liturgies and texts. The Book of Common Prayer, or SPCK, Society for Promoting Christian Knowledge, is a 1698 Thomas Bray baby. Thomas Bray is responsible for it in 1698. It was first translated into Māori in 1830 and has gone through several translations and different editions since. There was 1840, 1848, 1859, 1883, and 1905. Now, it was roughly about this size. Oh, I don't know if you can see it. Not a very big size. This is not the rawiri in my hand, but I'm just trying to show you the size of it. The translated 1662 Book of Common Prayer is commonly called Te Rawiri, or the David, which is attributed to a person of authority. And hopefully it won't fade out, but this is, I can't get it to pick it up. This is the bound version that I have. Otherwise, it's available in a hard copy, which I don't have. Very, very difficult to get a hold of those rawiri, the originals. Te rawiri is still used throughout Aotearoa, particularly among older kaumātua queer in rural areas and with staunch users. Staunch users meaning that they won't use the New Zealand prayer book, our current version of the prayer book. They would prefer to stay with the Book of Common Prayer and Te Rawiri. And unless we're going to tackle them while they're doing a prayer, it's going to continue to be in use. So yes, it's being used in spite of the newer prayer book. Those links you can see, 1905 Māori. Oh, I forgot a macron. 1905 hymnal. Now they're clickable links if you want to click on them, and you'll see that they've all been kept in archives and museums. So they're available for you to go and have a look at. So when you do get this resource to look back on, you'll be able to click on those links and go to where those original documents are. The hymnal is not a lot of difference from the old hymnal to the new one. So they are clickable links when you want to explore the text. So the hikoi from an 1840 Te Tiriti to a 1992 Te Pouhere is an interesting one. In the lead up to Te Pouhere in the 90s, some of you were there and some of you were not. We'll get to explore your experience of that shortly. But for now, I'd like us to listen to this extract of Bishop John Bluck, expounding on parts of that hikoi in his 2017 Te Pouhere Koho, or sermon, at St. Matthew's in the city. Whakarongo mai.
They met one morning in 1936 in Parliament Buildings, a suitably solemn venue for a Prime Minister and a prophet to meet. Being Wellington, it was probably raining and blowing a gale, just to add to the gravitas of the occasion. Michael Joseph Savage, the popular Labour Premier, but not much loved by Tahu Potiki Ratana. 4 years before, Ratana had delivered a 30,000-strong petition to Parliament to make good on the promises of the treaty. It hadn't happened, so the prophet came calling. Now, Ratana was an important figure for Anglicans. Our bishops had praised his work as a faith healer and an inspirational leader. In 1922, half the Anglican Māori in Wellington became Ratana followers. My predecessor as the Bishop of Waiapu had seconded a priest, the Reverend Piri Munro, to travel with the prophet and support him. So the ties between us were very close. Embedded in the entrance to the Ratana temple to this day is a broken fragment from the Marsden Cross at Rangioho, the birthplace of our church. So, when the bishops, in their wisdom, decided to excommunicate Ratana and his followers because he was becoming too powerful and because he talked too much about angels, anger and alienation set in that we have yet to recover from. And when I tried to reopen a conversation with the bishops 50 years later about apologies and healing broken promises and reconciliation with the Ratana movement, no one, Māori or Pākehā, wanted to know. That 1936 meeting with Savage was all about the broken promises of the Crown, not the Church. Ratana did not do a lot of talking, but he did a lot of speaking, symbolically. He brought 3 gifts to Savage: a kumara pierced with 3 huia feathers, a bird made extinct by predators that Pākehā had introduced, and a vegetable that Māori had little land left to plant, and a green stone tiki that spoke of Māori riches and mana now being destroyed, and a broken gold watch and chain belonging to Ratana's father, who had no money to repair it. Savage must have found this encounter challenging. "Brother," he said, "these things are speaking to me. I can hear them." And it is reported that Savage took the greenstone tiki to his grave. The thing about broken promises, big or small, is that they won't ever let you go until you do something about them. Those on the receiving end of the break refuse to forget them, even if those on the delivering end suffer from amnesia or prejudice or just act dumb. Broken promises take on a life of their own. It is extraordinary how far we go to cover up broken promises, perhaps because we know how powerful they are and what havoc they can wreak. take the lengths we have gone to diminish the Treaty of Waitangi, even without Winston's help. It started as the bedrock of our nation, and only 32 years later, it had been declared a legal nullity by a learned judge. We'd even managed to retranslate the words of Hobson that he said to each chief as the treaty was signed. He iwi tahi tātou. He iwi tahi tātou. It doesn't translate as we are now one people, as Dr. Brash and the One New Zealand Foundation likes to claim. The true translation is, we are two peoples together in one nation. Thankfully, we have, since the 1970s, started to redress these broken and forgotten and distorted promises that our forebears made on our behalf. The kumara crop is flourishing. Inroads are underway against the predators that wiped out the huia. The mana of the tiki is rising again, and treaty settlements make the broken gold watch repairable. The treaty itself, once illegible from water damage and rodents, was rehoused last month in a secure, state-of-the-art $10 million vault. Earthquake-proofed, but still not immune from the seismic shocks of promises that wait to be honoured. And every little step toward that honouring needs to be celebrated. Like the Crown settlement this month with the people of Parihaka, whose village was destroyed in 1881 and their leaders exiled as punishment for their non-violent resistance to land confiscation. There is a long way to go before the promises made to Māori are fully honoured and we are able to enjoy the peace that will come from that. Not just personally, it will be the sort of peace that the First Testament writers describe as shalom, when justice is restored and the social fabric that surrounds us is woven strong and wide enough to embrace both rich and poor. It's what today's gospel means when it talks of building our house on a rock. You can take that literally or symbolically. It's best to take it both ways. When you are building in a war-torn, earthquake-prone country like ours, we're getting better at acknowledging the seismic risks of living in these shaky isles, but we are still to recognise the devastation of the New Zealand wars of the 1860s. And as Anglicans, we should do that because those wars destroyed overnight 40 years of missionary work and came close to discrediting the incredible achievements of our first bishop, George Selwyn. But this Te Pouhere Sunday is not a day to end by bemoaning our failures. This is a day to celebrate a marvellous achievement that happened in the General Synod, Te Hinota Whanui, in 1992 in Hamilton, when delegates from this parish and all our churches brought a new Anglican constitution into being that did honour the promises made in 1840 and to Māori ever since. Promises of mutual recognition and respect, shared decision-making and resources. The right of each tikanga to organise its own affairs, to choose different cultural expressions of faith, and to keep open all avenues that lead to the common ground.
Okay, there you go. We're going to go into some breakout rooms, and despite the 15 minutes it's got up there, we're going to give you 10. But what I'd like you to discuss in your rooms, please, and then somebody, you can nominate a speaker for your group when you come back. Insights into, is the Pouhere working as expected based on the history of Te Tiriti? And can you offer us any examples of success or failure? If you could discuss those two things and come back with those insights. You'll have time in the future sessions this month to, we'll be going deeper into some of those discussions. So if we can keep it just to those two things today, that'd be great. So you'll now be sent into your breakout rooms for 10 minutes. Haere tātou. No mai, hoki mai. Welcome back. Welcome back. I hope you've had a lively discussion. So I think we'll start with group one, perhaps. I don't know who your speakers are because you've chosen yourself. So whoever was speaking on behalf of group one or room one, you now have the floor. Kei a koe te papa. Whoever it is will need to unmute themselves.
Is that us?
That's it. Thank you, Prince.
Yes. We had a conversation about how in one parish, every 5th Sunday, they try to have a service in Māori, while some Pākehā did not attend or said, no, that's not the one that they want. And in other place, like at least 2 of us shared that we sing hymns in Māori and say the Lord's Prayer in Māori and include the prayer book parts of Māori in the English service, which is an ongoing practice. But also we felt it is more a tokenism rather than an active accommodation and inclusiveness of Māori in the service. So that's just briefly what we discussed. But we continue to encourage singing Māori hymns as much as we can by including them in our services. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, that's an interesting concept, of course, tokenism. That's something that many feel it is. And, you know, as through this series, we'll unpack that a little bit in the coming weeks. Thank you, Prince, and thank you for that group. Next, please.
Jacinta, we didn't choose a leader.
Okay.
And several of us are in personal positions where we didn't feel able to actually facilitate. So we just talked. So I'm in the awkward situation that no voice is offering to summarise, and we didn't agree that anybody would do that. But we were talking about roughly the same sort of things as Prince has just said, I think.
Right.
That's my feeling. Anybody in the group want to add a sentence or two to that?
Yeah. Thank you, Jane. We were reminded of the huge joy at the signing of the Constitution, and we also reflected a little bit on the way in which there was less communication at parishioner level than there had been before it, but there seemed to be a lot at bishop and other higher levels like that, if I can use the term higher, in the church. So we think there's been great examples of cooperation at the kind of bishop level, but we don't seem to have found a way of doing it as at the parishioner level.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm. Yes, thank you much. Thank you very much for that reflection. It is a phenomena. I agree, and again, we'll unpack in the next 3 sessions about how we can bring about some change, if it's desired, of course. It's always about desire, and I've said that right from day one, that it's got to be desired. And I think those who join in to Taha Māori would be an example. You desire to build upon your ministry. It's something within you. It's not a requirement by the diocese for you to do this, but you've come and you've participated. And I guess, you know, when we're talking about our parishioners and our congregations at the grassroots level, let's say, they have to desire it. And so, yeah, we'll talk later on about what that might look like in the future. Thank you very much, Jean and Chris. Another group, if we may.
It's Kay here from group 3. There were 3 of us. We had an interesting discussion. I might be taking the mic rather than being given permission. So if anyone else wants to chip in, that's fine. We started off by talking about how it's working as perhaps a general question that we grappled with in terms of how to mold an answer. But we talked about our concern in terms of tikanga Māori, in terms of priests not being entitled to a stipend, and perhaps in terms of the outworking of the three-tikanga church, it feels, from where I'm sitting anyway, inequitable or unfair in terms of distribution of wealth. I think we were all quite moved by John Bluck's theme of broken promises, and in one of our parishes in Ruakaka, it sounds as though there is some good connection between the local church and local Māori, and another of our participants is in a Māori church, and she felt that at times there was an invisibility and not being heard in the not having their voices heard. I hope I'm representing that correctly. The other thing that we talked about was, or I thought about anyway, was the concept of rupture and repair. At least the rupture has been acknowledged enough for us to be meeting like this and talking like this. And the image of the kumara with the feathers, in terms of our society, the desire to be predator-free by 2050 seems a very good outworking of that in terms of a promise.
Yes.
I don't know if any of my colleagues would like to add anything.
Thank you, Kay. That's very insightful. Yeah, definitely. definitely. And I agree, John Bluck does put across a very powerful message at that 25th anniversary of Te Pouhere in 2017. I personally preached at the cathedral that day, but 25 years, and now we're 29 years. This year is 29 years of the signing of the Constitution. And I think, you know, we have to take into consideration the things that have been shared with us this morning, not only from Bishop John Bluck, but from yourselves around, you know, is it working, those questions, and where have there been failures, where have there been successes. So thank you very much for sharing that. Stipend, of course, yes. Money, yes. Many Māori will say, yes, we need way more, way more, way more. And yeah, it's a long conversation. And it is a conversation that's on the table. That's been, we already know that. Relationships between diocese and hui amora, definitely on the table. Kia ora. Thank you for that group. And we got one last group.
Yes, that was us. I drew the short straw by the stunned silence for everyone else. However, we actually got some really good comments going. Most of us in small ways are using a bit of te reo in the services. There is some negative pushback, but generally it was felt that that's diminishing, or if it's still there, it's not getting as far as to the priests. So things like in greetings and response, very occasional hymn, the two of us who have the Lord's Prayer and te reo twice a month, getting the congregation to actually say it is the usual problem I think we have with our own lack of confidence in speaking the language. So the more we do it and the more we hear it, it was felt the more acceptable it would be. In our case, we have to have it both in English and te reo. We can't just have it in te reo. That's extremely, yes, if we're going to have it in te reo, we want it in English as well, is the general feedback. Successes and failures that we've experienced. One of us in the group, their congregation, one year, I think it was, visited the Otara Māori Anglican Church for a service, and that the congregation of that church came back in the reverse visit. The whole of the service in the Māori Anglican Church, of course, was in Māori, and she felt that that's probably why they didn't do it anymore, because everyone was just so overwhelmed and feeling probably alienated from the service because there was no translation at all. I commented on the fact that speaking te reo in the congregation and feeling that I'm not doing it very well, which is the sense that others have in the congregation, which is why they don't want to look foolish in saying something incorrectly. And the comment came back to say that the feeling from those Māori in any of the congregations are that they're just really happy that we're making any attempt at all to speak in te reo. So that was helpful. Still, I think there's still a sense that our engagement with te reo is sort of tokenism. And there's really only two of our parishioners who really want to initiate the use of te reo. One of them is married to our only Māori member in the congregation, and the other is the one person who is really sensitive to and conscious of the fact we are a multicultural environment, and she wishes to make sure we don't forget that. And that's very good for us. But apart from that, unless I'm initiating it and saying we're going to do this, and they say, well, okay, since you say we're going to do this, we'll do this. There's nothing coming from anybody else to say, hey, what about that? And we've been practicing He Honore, as I told you just and we're going to have to face the Bishop and Archdeacon with that on Saturday afternoon, and I'll let you know how we go. But we practiced it for 4 weeks, I think. 4 times we practiced it, and I'm desperately hoping that they will actually sing it when we get to front on Saturday afternoon. So that's generally speaking, I think we're all just got toes in the water and wondering how to move forward without alienating our Pākehā congregations.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Gillian. Thank you for that very comprehensive feedback from your group. Yeah, lots of aspects of challenge, let's say, that your group talked about. I think the thing that sort of jumps out for me a little bit is the translation thing. So I'm imagining that the Māori congregation probably used the 476. That's the most commonly used liturgy in the prayer book by Māori, and the translation is available on the right-hand side. So I'm intrigued that they feel that it needs a translation when the translation is actually there. I could be wrong. It's very unusual for them to be using the 499, and the 499 doesn't have a translation. So I understand that. But anyway, that's something that we can all encourage our congregations in time, I guess. Again, they need to desire it, and if they don't desire it, they'll just resist. But I'm very blessed. Thank you very much for sharing your insights about the challenges of coming from Te Tiriti to Te Pouhere, and taking on board some of the insights that Bishop John Bluck shared with us. John Bluck is very much a person in the province that has expressed in some ways shortfalls, but also successes in the province around Te Tiriti, certainly Te Reo, and many other aspects. Next week, I'll give you an insight into the younger generation and what they think about that as well. So you can look forward to that delivery by the younger generation. Again, thank you. I'm just going to share the screen again. Sorry, aroha mai. The Pouhere Collect. E te kairaranga, ko koe te kaiwhatu, ko mātou te muka I mahia ai koe a te Pouhere. Te whāriki whakakotahi I o mātou tikanga I Aotearoa. Puta noa I te moana nui a kiwa. Nā tō ringa matau I whiri e kitea ai te pāruhi o te hoahoa. Me te tauira I roto I ngā rerekētanga o tēnā o mātou. Mā tōna kaha me te whakaro kotahi te kaupapa e manaaki. Tai rawa ki tōna pua waitanga. Whakamāharatia mātou, nau mātou I rāranga a mātou noho kotahi hei whāriki. E kitea ai tāu hoahoa I oto I te kotahitanga. E kia nei ko te Pouhere. E whakapono ana tātou ki te atua ki te matua kaharawa. Koia te kaihanga o te rangi o te whenua. Ki tāna tamakotahi anō hoki, ki tō tātou āriki kia I hūkarati. I whakatangata tia nei e te wairua tapu. I whānau I te puhi I a meri, I whakamamaitia I te wā I a ponoti o pīrato. I ri pekatia I mate I tanumia, I heke atu ki te reinga. No te toru o ngā rā I ara ke a kake atu ana ki te rangi. E noho mai nei I te ringa matau o te atua, o te matua kaharawa. Ka hoki mai anō ia I reira ki te whakarite whakawā mō ngā tāngata ora mō ngā tāngata mate. E whakapono ana tātou ki te hāhi tapuputa noa I te ao, ki te kotahitanga o te hunga tapu, ki te murunga hara, ki te āranga mai o te tinana, me te ora tonu. Āmeni. You know this. Kia tau, kia tātou katoa. Te ata whai o tō tātou āriki a ihu karati. Me te aroha o te atua, me te whiwhinga tahitanga ki te wairua tapu, ake, āmine. So next week, more pastoral liturgies we'll be doing. Any volunteers for the opening or closing or the mihi, please email us on that Taha Māori email address. Thank you for coming along once again. It's been lovely to share Taha Māori with you once more. There is still more to learn, and there's more insights and more kōrero, more challenges for us to talk about. I reiterate that this is a platform where you're safe. It is safe and respectful to be honest and talk about the challenges that we have with Taha Māori. Noho ora mai, kia tau te rangi Māori, kia koutou katoa. Peace be with you all at all times. E manaaki e tiaki e ngā wā katoa, care for you and take care of you all the days. As is the norm, feel free to stay on for a casual kōrero if you'd like. You would have seen some of the links in the chat box that Megan has put up for you. You can, save those links somewhere. You can save the chat box, I believe, somewhere. You can save whatever in that chat box before you log off. And then you'll be able to click on those links to find our resources. But thank you for joining us again. It's lovely. Kotahitanga. Kotahitanga. In the words of Hobson, nā iwi kotahi. Nā iwi kotahi. Kia ora mai tātou.